it's a public health concern. And that is, first of all, we have to understand that we have an order in place and we also have a public health law. That law clearly states that if anybody knowingly spread an infectious disease, then they're committing an offense. Uh, the Parliament and the clerk of the Parliament 2 days ago put out a letter to all members of Parliament to clearly state that if you have COVID-19, that you shouldn't attend the Parliament in person, but you can do so virtually. So I guess the Parliament recognized that there might have been members of Parliament who have been affected by the disease, and they offered a different methodology for them to participate in the proceedings of the Parliament. Now, what we had yesterday was two members of Parliament who have tested positive, and instead of staying in self-isolation as is required by the order and is required by the law, decided that they are going to breach those orders and law that we have and attend Parliament in person. One of those persons is Mr. Jones, and the other is Mr. Sherrod Duncan. Now, from the information that I have now received, having saw that this went public, from the information that I have now received, they were tested, they were advised that they should stay home for at least 13 days, the first 10, and then the second 3, once they were asymptomatic, that they would then finish their home isolation. Both of them are still supposed to be in home isolation. And at the time when they got the positive test, to when Mr. Jones was in Parliament and Mr. Duncan was in Parliament, it's within that time frame. So both of them have breached the rules that we have for self-quarantine. This is actually very highly irresponsible of, of them to come to the Parliament and endanger their colleagues, endanger all of us who was in the dome, all the workers, the parliamentary staff, and everybody. So this is unacceptable behavior. It's really highly irresponsible for them to know that they have a positive test and yet show up in the Parliament. And as the Minister of Health, I think when I see that the public is put in danger in such a way, then I have a right to inform the relevant authority, and in this case, the persons who are managing the Parliament. So that is why the clerk was informed yesterday, and I'm following up with an official letter to the clerk to point out, because now the persons who were exposed to these two gentlemen would now have to take precautions. They might, if people were in very close proximity to the two, they might now have to take measures for self-quarantine, and eventually after 5 to 7 days, probably they will require to have a PCR test. And this is because of the reckless behavior of two members of Parliament who really should have known better and should have stayed away from the sitting and do so virtually. So these are the facts. And I think now that the APNU and AFC has made that public yesterday, that the public ought to know that these two persons have really behaved irresponsibly and recklessly, because now they have exposed other people who unknowingly and unwittingly was associated with them yesterday and even before, because I understand that they have breached these rules and have been in the public domain when they should have been at home. So I hope that they would curb such behavior, stay at home, self-quarantine, and stop endangering the lives of other Guyanese.